Dan, I've been wondering, if I've got reverb in my amp, why do I need a reverb pedal?
Well, Michael, I'm going to tell you. Boom! Hey there, welcome to That Pedal Show. Dan here.
Mick here, hello.
Takes me a little while to get out of that. Once you're in that whooshy headspace, it's like, and you're back in the room.
It's very nice.
It's very nice.
I feel unusually relaxed.
Very good. So, the question today is, if you have a reverb in your amplifier, do you need a reverb pedal? But before we get into that, a little bit of housekeeping. First of all, thank you for joining us. Please subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. And also a massive thank you to anyone that's gone to thatpedalshowstore.com and grabbed t-shirts and strings and hats and pedals and all the stuff.
It is predominantly how we fund the show, so if you buy stuff, it keeps us on the air.
Indeed.
Simple as that.
Thank you so much. Okay, back in the room. Yes, the question. Someone mentioned this in one of the chats.
It comes up quite a bit, actually.
And it's a really interesting question, I thought.
And it's much misunderstood, isn't it, reverb? So you get your didactic division between people who like reverb, people who don't like reverb, or the non-reverb people over there, or the reverb people over there. And it's sort of seen as this, you know, you've either got reverb or no reverb, and actually there's a million shades therein.
Indeed.
And so what are the questions we get asked? Number one is, I've got reverb in my amp, why do I need a reverb pedal? Mm-hmm. One of the things that really interests me is when people say, oh, you know, and then once you get it in the mix, you can't hear it anyway, makes no difference.
Yep.
It's quite different because, you know, all these beautiful textures, like some of the textures Dan was demonstrating at the top of the show there, you know, once that gets into a dense mix, is it lost? And all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So I guess what we're going to do is show a couple of amp reverbs and then add some stuff on top to give you some ideas about creative ways in which you can use reverbs in addition, yeah?
Perfect. Okay, so let's start with the amps. Today, we've got the Tone King Imperial Mark II, and that has a beautiful spring reverb in it.
Really lovely, traditional, I assume, long tank spring reverb.
Yes.
I'm going to have a quick look. Can't see, might need a torch. While I do that, the Victory VC35 has a digital reverb in it.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. It's a dry analog signal path and the digital reverb is mixed on top. And I've found that the more companies try and make digital spring reverbs, the more it sets them apart from any amplifier with a decent spring reverb, because they seem so like far apart. So what like Victory's done and a number of amplifier companies have done is they've done takes on reverb. It's got a bit of spring, a bit of hall, maybe a bit of whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the way it works is you choose your reverb chip and then you program it
however you want.
to give you the reverb sound that you want. And I
Yeah.
think I remember talking to Martin Kidd, who's the designer of Victory Amp, saying they've done that reverb not to be a straight spring emulation, not necessarily to be a room or a plate. We'll get into all of this as we go forward, but just somewhere between a room and a plate, I think is what he said.
Right.
So a bit of ambience.
Yeah.
We'll hear it in a sec.
And that's really what we're talking about, right? We're talking about ambience. We're talking about the sound of a space. The spring reverb is really interesting because it does have that sense. It gives you a bit of space, but it's its own thing.
Yeah. Well, let's do that then. So we'll start with the Tone King. I'll turn the Victory off for a second. Dan will play and we'll hear no reverb and a really nice amp spring reverb, which I have deduced is a long tank. Dry as a nun's wine glass.
None of the nuns I know.
Ready?
Yep.
Come on, man. Come on, come on, come on.
How do you not talk over the trails
I know.
when it's that long?
I know. We better not play too much more.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is an example of a really, really nice amp spring reverb.
Gorgeous. What are the controls on the reverb? Is it just reverb? Just reverb.
Yeah.
Okay.
So on some amps, you've got a send and a return, which is essentially
Dwell and
and some have a tone control as well. But that's just
right.
The majority of amps that have spring reverb in it have a knob for reverb.
Great. Okay.
Yeah. So we'll turn the that off. Oops. Turn that off and this on. Here's the Victory VC35. No, nothing.
It's the springs in here.
You hear the springs
hearing?
of the guitar. Okay, and we'll put some of that on then.
Wow. So it's very different.
Yeah.
Really cool. Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, a spring reverb is a long spring tank with physical springs in it.
Mm-hmm.
And the reverb is made by passing a signal into it, runs along the springs, and that's what creates the sound of space. A digital chip is not very big at all. And that's just a bunch of programming.
Yep, and you can flick it as much as you like. It'll never go.
And it'll never do anything. And what you heard on the Victory there was that there was quite a lot of decay, quite a lot of bigness in the sound of the reverb and a lot of bloom on the beginning of it, but then the decay was pretty short.
Right.
It almost went away quite quickly.
Interesting.
Those are just programming decisions on the part of the designer when you get to digital reverb, as we are about to do.
Yeah.
So it's that question, isn't it? You those of us who like a bass level of reverb in our sound, and I think we both do.
Absolutely. I find it really hard to play without it, actually.
Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll switch both amps on and we will set them up with a bass level of reverb, and everything we do after that is going to be adding additional reverb on top.
Sure.
Yeah?
Yep. So adding a bass level of reverb, not hard. It's basically, for me, as soon as I can hear it, done.
That's
It's
enough. Yeah, okay. Well, let's see where we get to then. Both amps back on.
And let's quickly switch back to the telly.
Here we go then. I'll dial in a bit of reverb on here.
Yep. Perfect. But isn't it funny, even with a little bit of reverb, the tails do go on?
Yeah.
Great.
I'd probably use more than that.
Put a bit more on.
No, I think...
No, because I think I would too. I think I would too, because I can't, when you're playing, I can't quite hear it. I can hear it when it's off.
Yeah.
And if you turned it off, then I could hear it, but I think it needs just a hair more in the spring.
All right. Go on then.
Glorious.
And it's... Some people might say that's quite a lot of reverb.
Right.
Lots of people would say it's nowhere near enough. So,
yeah, right.
you know, one person's meat is another man's poisson.
Indeed. Okay, so there's our base level of reverb.
Yeah.
We've got a little bit of space around the note. So why would we add reverb on top of that? And it's really simple. It's giving you more of a good thing, you know, and especially when we're talking about textures, it's amazing what adding more reverb on top of a bass reverb will do. So let's look at the simplest reverb we have on the board, which is the JHS 3 series. You've got amount of reverb, EQ, and the amount of decay.
What's it based on? Do you know?
Some of Josh's favourite reverbs all thrown in together.
Because we've used some terms so far. We've used terms like room, plate, and hall. They are different types of reverb that we'll get into as we go on. I mean, they are as they say they are. A hall is the sound of a big reverberant hall. Room tends to be a smaller room. Plate is a thing they probably still use in studios, but used to use in studios. Big metal plate across which I guess is a charge. Yeah,
well, it's basically a similar technology in the spring reverb. You put a transducer at the start of it, you feed your signal in there, transducer turns the electrical energy into physical energy that goes across the springs, and then transducer at the other end turn the physical energy back to electrical energy. Plate reverb is exactly the same. Transducer at the stop at one side of the massive big metal plate that's suspended with springs. You put the transducer on the end, you feed your signal into that, and then it reverberates up the plate, and you can change the point where you put the transducer on the plate. So, you know, you put it further away or closer towards the transducer for different sounds. But it's a similar technology to the spring.
Plate's very commonly used on, well, pretty much everything, but especially vocals.
Yeah.
You often hear plate reverb on a vocal. So Anyway, okay, so we don't know exactly what the 3 Series is based on, other than it's some of Josh's favourite reverbs.
Yeah, and depending on where you put the EQ and the decay and you get some really interesting sounds. So let's see if I can conjure a room out of it. I'll have a go. So isn't it really interesting? As soon as that turns off, it's like, man, that's really dry.
Yeah. So super subtle. And then I guess if we just add more of it.
Yep.
Loads more verb, loads more decay. Probably not a sound you'd want to kick on during Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter, because I think you'd miss it, wouldn't you?
Yeah. So one cool thing about that, it does have the pre-delay on it.
Pre-delay being?
It gives a short delay before the reverb sound. So if you imagine you're in a big room and you hit your guitar really hard and it goes, it's going to take a second before the sound of the reflections come back to you. And that's what a pre-delay does.
That sounds like this.
Right.
Okay, so here's our no JHS reverb.
I'm trying so hard not to talk over the trails. I really am. So it gives you just a breath before the reverb kicks in, and that's really cool. You can use a really simple reverb and even subtly just to add a little bit more depth.
Yeah, and that can be, I mean, if you think about, again, coming back to the top of the show where we sort of said you've got the people who like reverb and the people who don't like reverb, and it's either on or off. Well, there's no reason why it can't be more varied, and in the same way that you would record different parts for songs in a recording, then no reason why you can't use it like that in a live situation where one part of a song might need to be super dry and the other part of it might need to be lovely and wet.
Yeah.
For dynamic effect.
Absolutely.
To give it, it sounds so obvious, it's almost not worth saying, but I think with other effects we think like that, with things like certain modulations, like the chorus has got the chorus has got chorus on it, or the different types of overdrive, but actually varying reverb in that way might not be as obvious to some people.
Sure. Perfect. Okay, so that's adding like a really simple standard delay on top of a bass tone.
Reverb.
Exactly. Reverb. But now if we start to look at some more specific delays, but now if we start to look at some more specific reverbs, I love adding a plate reverb on top of a spring reverb.
Okay.
It's such a great sound. There's something that it just works so well for guitars. Now we've got a couple of options here. Let's have a look at the RV6.
Yep.
It's in reality it's just as simple as a JHS, but we've got a few different reverb options there. Okay. I'm setting it on the plate, and then we'll hear what that sounds like. There we go. So I'll turn the effect level down.
So it has, just sorry for the purposes of clarification, it has a plate, a room,
Modulated,
a spring,
a hall,
so a bunch of different types basically.
shimmer,
Yeah.
which we'll get to in a minute, which is really fun.
All right.
Okay, so I'll get you to play, and what I'll do, I'm going to set on a plate reverb now,
Yeah.
and you play, and I'm just going to turn the plate reverb up.
What would you like me
as
to
you
play, Dan?
I would like you to play Your Heart Out. Hit me with your best shot, Pat Benatar.
That's what we were trying to remember in VCQ last night. Okay.
Just play some chords. Just play some,
Yeah.
few chords.
I didn't get that far with my lessons, the chords part.
There's something about the frequency of a plate reverb that just works so well with guitar.
Yeah, they tend to be quite up there, don't they?
Yeah.
Not a lot of thick mids. It's it manifests in the high end is where I always seem to hear
which
it.
is why it works so well with the vocals as well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you get the can I just want to hear that with some overdrive
Yeah,
in a
yeah.
minute. Doesn't get in the way,
No.
especially just pads it out, and it's quite interesting in the context of that. But you wouldn't hear it in a mix. If you're standing there with the cymbals crashing and everything else going on around you, you probably wouldn't really hear it in the mix. Turn it off,
Yeah.
then you'll hear it,
Yeah. Totally.
because it's just giving you that. And it's one of those effects, I think, with guitar especially, it just helps sort of meld everything. Would certainly help you sit in the mix,
Yeah.
in the band mix,
Yeah.
better.
Yeah. So we'll look at some reverbs later that might not necessarily help that, but certainly plate reverb.
Yeah.
Just because of the way the frequencies are and that it's affecting. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You do need to be careful with plates and what we'll get onto in a minute with small rooms, because they can, if your tone is really great, they'll make you sound epic, but they can mask not awesome tone, if you know what I mean.
Oh, right.
If you,
Because they make it more prominent or something?
well, it's because it works in frequencies that for guitar players work so well.
Yeah.
So It might be you've got your plate reverb on, you're going, this is great. You need to make sure that the tone's working without the plate as well.
Right.
You know what I mean? But yeah, it's for me, plates is always the first port of call on top of
Would
strings.
you say sometimes when we're talking about delay, one of the things we often say is, the sort of more complex you play, if you're playing fast passages, then leaning on a really big loud delay when you're playing fast passages can get in the way. Is it true of reverb as well? Is it true where perhaps the style of your playing would suit more or less reverb?
Absolutely. What I'll do with this, all I'm going to do is increase the time of this plate. And then I'm going to pull it back. All right, so just do your thing.
Yeah.
I'll put on loads, give us a little flourish, and then I'll pull it back and do the same thing.
Okay. I'll deliberately play something semi-busy.
So a little goes a long way.
I love it.
It's great. I think you can get away with more reverb than delay.
So right, because with delay,
it's coming back in
out of time.
Totally.
Whereas that, because the reflections are so closely together, which is what makes reverb.
Yeah.
It's easier.
Absolutely. So what happened there is, as I shortened that time, we started getting almost a slapbacky thing, and that leads us to one thing that we both love to do with our CXM.
Yeah.
And this is small room reverb.
Total revelation to me. So there we are with the big plate that you've just heard, quite kind of high frequency together, smooth, small room, much more kind of retro-y, evocative, isn't it?
There's a thing when you're playing like rock and roll with it, everything comes to life. It's really hard to put into words, but whereas the plate is like a studio effect, or something that you would hear on loads of things. Yeah. The small room thing is just so perfect for guitars. It's untrue.
Let's hear it then. Here you go. So which pedal are we going to try?
Let's
the collider for this?
Yep.
So the collider is a delay and a reverb pedal. We're just using the reverb, and it has, again, a bunch of different reverb engines in it. It has a number of parameters, which we'll explore.
That's killer.
Do you want loads of overdrive, or do you want less overdrive?
No, loads of overdrive is good.
Just going to take off one of those gain stages a minute. Then we can start to manipulate a few things. One is the tone of the room, so how bright the reverb is. I'll do it full up and full down so you can just hear that.
It's so good. It's so good.
So that might equate to the kind of room you're in. So when it's all the way around, maybe think of a bathroom like a tiled room.
Yeah.
Really, if you ever want some instant inspiration, stick your amp in a tiled room and record it. And then all the way back, it might be a room
soft
with
furnishings in a child's nursery.
Yeah, soft furnishings or wood or something like that. And either one of those or any part in between might suit the kind of thing you're playing.
So stick your Marshall 100 watt in your child's nursery and instant joy.
So that's one thing. The other thing is we've got pre-delay on here as well. If you want that, just give you a listen to that.
So good.
It's such a cool sound.
Yeah.
And I
so
think
good.
there's modulation in here as well, is there?
Yes.
Very cool. It might be the dispersion.
Yeah.
But anyway, just a bit of movement in the reverb, which is such a cool sound. Because I think maybe the temptation with reverb is to, maybe not so much nowadays, but certainly when Dan and I were starting off playing, reverb pedals didn't really exist. And it's really only been in the last, well, I'll say 10, but I think even less than that for a lot of people, that it's kind of been acceptable for people to use reverb pedals. Clearly, in the modern idiom, they're all over everyone's pedal boards because they're so ubiquitous now.
Yeah.
But it wasn't that long ago when that wasn't the case. And in that context, it's probably true to say that most of our experience of reverb was the spring reverb in the amp, over which you had one knob.
Exactly. And it's back there.
Yeah. So you said it and you don't bother.
Sure.
In fact, funnily enough, slight tangent, one of my favourite ever guitar amps that I used for a few years was a Mesa Boogie Mark III. And Mesa wired their reverb foot switch up, not to go from off to on, but to go from on to full.
Oh, really?
Or on to much fuller.
Right, so you could, that's very clever.
So you got two levels of reverb rather than off and on.
Yeah.
And that was pretty cool,
Very
for
clever.
sort of dramatic effect. But of course now we can affect so many more parameters. And just a little bit of experimentation like that, it's a real, it's like a real aha moment when you step on one of those room reverbs playing it like a fairly traditional rock and roll solo.
And the other side of that is, most of the time when we're talking about reverb, a lot of the time we're talking about these big lush textures. But hearing that room reverb with a riff is life-changing.
Yeah, well, it's kind of where echo meets reverb, isn't
Right.
it?
Yeah,
Because it's in a
right.
room. But here you go. We'll just have the...
It's so cool.
It's not exactly the right sound, but it is so much more evocative
Sure.
of that sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, so we've gone from a really simple reverb. We've had a look at a plate reverb. We've had a look at a small room reverb. Now we're going to have a look at some, what did you call them before? fantasy, evocative, massive texture,
Crazy
reverbs.
Yeah.
So we'll go from probably the least crazy to the really out
Well,
there.
let's ease into crazy, because if we look at it chronologically, spring reverb in amps anyway, the DSP capabilities of the early digital reverb units, you can start monkeying with the parameters to create new sounds.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting. I think Earthquaker were an early adopter of that technology.
Yeah.
And absolutely nailed.
But presumably before that, all that stuff was available in the rack reverb units, was it?
So if you look at something like the H3000 harmonizer,
Yeah.
that was a
Eventide
H3000. That was a massive foray into all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So being able to do that has been around for a long time. Being able to do it at a level of quality in a pedal format is relatively
Much
new.
more. Yeah.
So like Earthquaker, I think of absolute masters of that stuff. But let's start with the Gamechanger light pedal, because these guys are doing really interesting things. This is a spring reverb, but they're using infrared sensors
Right.
around the spring, and you can mix the spring and the light sensors in, and for some really interesting reverb textures.
Just in case you were in any doubt, there is actually a spring in there. That's all I'm saying.
Very good. Very good. Very good. So
Probably would have helped to read the manual.
I've read the manual. It hasn't helped me at all.
Yeah, so what we've got is a bunch of parameters top right there which affect the reverb tails.
Yeah.
And there are a bunch of things such as tremolo, feedback, something called harmonic optics, sweep. So it's affecting the reverb trails in a certain way.
Yep.
Plus you've got tone control. You can mix the spring and the optical. You can increase the drive through the reverb circuit.
You can, and then you've got your original dry signal as well that you can turn off completely and just have. Yeah, it's really cool. It's unique, and there's some.
Well,
there's
like
some,
everything that Gamechanger does.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, it's really cool. But let's Now, if we go from that, we have a look at the Earthquaker.
Just before we do that, what I did was I put the switch onto momentary, like latching or non-latching, so that you can either turn the pedal on and off, or when you hold the switch down, it brings the reverb in. And that's what I was doing towards the end there, so that it just comes in for dramatic effect.
And then trails over.
And it trails off again.
Yeah.
So
very nice.
I think with some of these more effecty reverbs, that can be an effective way to use it.
Which is basically what we're going to be looking at now in this, because having a reverb that allows you to basically increase the reverb when you want to increase it and then decrease it.
Yeah.
It's a really cool thing to be able to do. So I've got the expression pedal hooked up to the Astral Destiny, and it's on probably the simplest mode of this pedal, and it's just soundscape.
Massive love to Earthquaker for just being there for Sonic Voyagers. Always.
Indeed.
And relentlessly.
Yeah. So I'll get you to play, and then I'm just going to... No, play some...
Okay.
Just play some big chords, and what I'm going to do, I'll get you to play some sustained chords.
Yep.
And then I'm going to ease the expression pedal in.
Cool. Kind of an extreme example, but you got your choppy rhythm part.
Yep.
This is for like old farts like me who don't play experimental Sonic Voyager music. Even in, the idiom of fairly normal songwriting, you've got your choppy rhythm part and your spacey middle 8-bit, haven't you? Mm-hmm. And that's back to what we said earlier a little bit about using it in a dynamic way.
Yeah.
So that it just gives you music, on the bit that is complex and the drummer's knocking 10 bells out the snare and the ride cymbal, loads of reverb may not work. You might be in a shoegaze band, in which case it does. But that spacey bit,
Yeah.
What would you do with that?
Well, I would probably, so with the expression pedal, you can control any of the knobs, right?
Yeah.
I'd probably have it on the length as opposed to the mix. So
it's one of the best UIs for expression pedal I've ever seen. You put the expression pedal forward, you tweak the knob that you want the expression pedal to control, then you put the expression pedal back and you're done.
Yeah,
No
it's
menus,
so clever.
no messing about.
Yeah, yeah. It's
brilliant.
so clever. So,
It's bonkers.
it's really great. It's really great. And this is, you know, one of the things that Earthquaker is, you know, known for is being able to come up with really creative ways to affect reverbs. And if we think of something like a shimmer, so what the shimmer is, they take that reverb trail and they put an octave on top of it. So you get a sound like this. So that's with the octave up, but now we can put an octave up and an octave below.
Yeah. So these are the various modes that affect the reverb trails.
Amazing.
Isn't it? I mean,
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
we've all got those little dreams of in between the set, you know, well, I don't know, something happens, the drummer goes off because he's had a curry on the way or something. And you're left to entertain the audience for a minute with your massive reverb swells.
Yeah.
It's
So
really cool.
Really cool.
I've very rarely ever played anything like this. Simply the best.
So, you know, that on top of the amp, reverb, fantastic. And of course, a classic old favourite is putting the overdrive after the reverb.
Oh, now you're talking.
Yeah. So let me just go up here. I'll quickly get rid of all this shenanigans.
So, yeah, you know, hopefully in a roundabout kind of way, there's some ideas here that you might try with short reverbs, longer reverbs, bigger reverbs, smaller reverbs, weird reverbs, for want of a better term, just to add a bit of interest to your tonal palette. Dan's currently using the Gig Rig G3 to swap the order of the pedals around so that the overdrive comes after the reverb. Now, in normal pedal order, normal in inverted commas, we know that nothing's really normal and there are no rules, but in normal pedal order, you would have the reverb at the end of your pedal chain,
Yep.
usually before distortion. Similarly, if you've got distortion in your amp, that's why you would run your reverb in your effects loop, so that it comes after the distortion.
Yep.
However, putting your reverb pedal before your distortion pedal is a very, very interesting noise.
Yeah. So in the world of shoegaze, it's kind of a common thing. So let's just take a really simple reverb. Let's just take the JHS reverb.
Yep.
And then we'll have it before and after. So we'll put loads of gain on,
Yep.
try and get a heavy sound, and we can do some drop D shenanigans.
Slowly going up.
Cool.
That's the bit. What I think the way that sound is always characterized is when the reverb is after,
Yeah.
everything is as expected. But then when the reverb is before, you kind of go boof, and then it goes. Brah!
Yeah. It's so cool.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
I think it would be great for the, as they're doing their first dance
Ladies and gentlemen,
to the Josh Groban song or
Yep.
the.
please welcome Mr. and Mrs. Paul Band choice.
Good.
Very good. Well, there you go. So all that on top of a,
Yeah.
the idea is that there are so many textures available within reverbs. It's not just I've got reverb on my amplifier, therefore I'm good. If any of these textures and sounds sort of pique your interest, check them out because they work wonderfully on top of a core reverb tone.
Yes, very much. Reverb is not one thing.
Indeed.
It's a many splendid thing
Indeed.
of endless variety, and it's really fun to get in there and muck about.
Really fun. Thank you so much for watching. Let us know what you think in the comments, and don't forget to join us on Monday, 5 p.m, wherever we are.
Yeah, 5 p.m. current UK time.
Current UK time for VCQ, and we can all have a chat about it then. But yes, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. Also, again, massive thank you to anyone that's gone to thatpedalshowstore.com and bought some merch. It really helps us do the show. Likewise, massive thank you to our preferred retailers in the UK and Europe is
Anderton's Music of Guildford in Surrey, where you can buy probably most of this stuff.
Indeed. And our dear friends in Australia.
Pedal Empire of Brisbane, Queensland, likewise.
There are links.
There are, if you click the description down, in fact, do click the description down, there are some interesting items in there, one of which is links to Sweetwater in the US, where if you click on those links and buy stuff, Dan and I get kickback off that, and it helps us fund the show in a big way. So
Yes, indeed.
happy days.
Indeed. And massive thank you to our patrons on Patreon. Thank you all so much.
Which also helps fund the show.
Indeed. Have a fantastic week, and we'll see you soon.
Okay, cheerio.
Bye.
Bye.